Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books Author Reading Series. You can find out about this and all of our other author events at skylightbooks.com, where you can also browse our inventory as well as order books online. You can also follow us on Twitter or even be our friend at Facebook. If you would like to talk to a real person, we can be reached at 323-660-1175. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
And now, without further ado, we're very excited to have Meg Howrey here tonight. It's always a thrill to have the launch party for a book on its release date as a debut novel. It's just such good energy and good feeling. So I'm going to let somebody else actually tell y'all more about Meg, because I'm sure she'll do a better job than I will. But thank you for coming, and here is Chris.
Hello. Hi, I'm Chris Lynch. I have no business being here, but I am all you have for the next minute and a half until Meg gets up here, so you're stuck with me. My first impression of Meg was that she had beautiful thumbs. This isn't as strange as it sounds. Well, maybe it is. In any case, she was lounging on a divan, or maybe it was a settee, or possibly a fainting couch, in a rambling, ramshackle mansion on a private island owned by the Forbes family, off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. That's the kind of person Meg is. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that. Anyway, she was wearing something slinky and lovely, and unfortunately for her, not nearly warm enough for the freezing temperatures inside the gorgeously decaying, historic, tragically unheated mansion that seemed to those of us who had paid through the nose for a literary seminar there to have been insulated with all the generosity the Forbes clan could muster. In other words, nothing. In an attempt to stave off hypothermia, Meg had taken some warm wool tube socks and shoved her entire arms into them, cutting little holes for her thumbs to emerge only for absolute necessities, like holding a glass of wine or another glass of wine. The next morning before breakfast, this mysterious, leggy, shivering figure who reminded me a little of Natasha from the old Bullwinkle cartoons read a little something she had jotted down in the previous 6.5 minutes about twins, dancers, schizophrenia, nightmares, an evil red queen, and pretty much the entire meaning of life, identity, love, and loss. I had to know her, if only to see what the rest of her fingers looked like. They and she did not disappoint. I now know her as someone who can bake without butter or flour, who can hike a steep trail without breathing hard, who can deal with having her fancy central London hotel room turn out to be a filthy hovel in Wembley, thanks Expedia, and who can lift her own leg over her head, which I'm certain no other writer, living or dead, not even the nimblest Bronte sister or the famously elastic Turgenev, has ever been able to do. And now the whole world has a chance to get to know how dark, funny, smart, sophisticated, insightful, and just plain cool she is. Her debut novel, Blind Sight, has been called warm and surprising, a brainy meditation, an intelligent, engaging, and often funny. And it is. I am proud and happy to introduce my friend Meg Howrey and hope that enough of you will buy her book so that she can afford a pair of down gloves.
Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. I can't tell you, I've been having sort of no one will come nightmares, so this is tremendous, and I know you had to get parking and drive and babysitters, and so really, thank you so much. I got the book from my publisher a couple weeks ago, and I thought, oh, this is so great, because I haven't read the book since I did the last proofreading, so it's been, 2 months, 3 months, and I'll have so much, objectivity now. I'll really be able to see it and make, these great, succinct descriptions of the book, and that didn't happen. But I'll do my best to try to give it a little intro. It's actually it's the first book that I've had published, but not the first book that I wrote. The first book that I wrote, which was a work of unparalleled genius, but was rejected by everyone, really. Fun publishing tip for those of you. When they reject your book, there's kind of a standardized thing that they say after they give you a paragraph or two saying how much they loved it. Then there's a sentence that says, "Unfortunately, I was not able to fall in love with it as much as I hoped I would." Which you can't argue with at all. So I give that to you now in case you ever break up with someone and you don't want to have any kind of conversation about it, saying, "Unfortunately, I just didn't fall in love with you as much as I hoped I would." We'll end it, totally. So I put the work of unparalleled genius in a drawer, and I wrote something else, which is this book, which went a little bit better for me. I was thinking about a couple of things while I was working through the ideas for the book. One is that at the time that I was writing it, the Human Genome Project was very much in the news, and every book or article or magazine I picked up had something about genetic identity in it and biological identity and understanding ourselves in these terms in brain science. And I was really fascinated by this, and then also by the sort of backlash against that, the resistance that we seem to feel about understanding ourselves in biological terms. It seems like enlightenment must be spiritual. It can't be scientific. And I was thinking about that and questioning it and thinking about personal mythology and heroes' journeys. And I started to wonder if maybe there was a way of kind of reversing a hero's journey and taking someone, normally in a hero's journey, it's the figure starts in a very materialistic plane and then decides that they want something more out of life, so they take off and they meet spirit guides, Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of people, and they renounce their physical possessions, and they go through trials and tests, and then eventually they come to this very spiritual plane. And I wondered if maybe you could take a character who grew up in a really spiritual plane and wanted solid, hard biological fact. So that became this story. So this is Luke, who's 17 years old, and he's grown up in a really spiritual household by these very dominant, charismatic women. His grandmother, who's religious, his mother, who's very New Age. He's got two half-sisters. And as the novel opens, he's just gotten in touch with his biological father for the first time, who he's never known. And his father is an actor in Los Angeles, and he's flown Luke out for the summer for them to get to know each other. So that's the story, and drama ensues and all that. The book, he's got another job for the summer, Luke. He's got to put together his college application essay. And so he's doing some writing and trying to figure out what sort of thing would be good for his college application essay. And it's not going well for him, and doesn't really go well for him for most of the book, trying to figure that one out. So the first thing I'm going to read is we get throughout the book these little first-person essays that Luke is trying to write as he's thinking about his family and his life and what's happened so far and trying to think of something good. So this is him talking about sort of his past and his growing up. His mother was married and had two daughters, and then her husband, Paul, decided that he wanted to join an ashram in India and change his name to Deepak. And he did, and he split and hasn't been seen or heard from since. And so shortly after that, she had a one-night stand with a young electronics store employee, and that turns out to be Luke's dad. So here's Luke talking about some of this stuff and how things in his family were sometimes a bit confusing. My family moved from New York City to Delaware when I was 4, Pearl was almost 6, and Aurora was 7. Sarah told us that we were all going to live with Nana, and where Nana lived, there would be space and nature, and we would be able to greet the stars at night. Nana had a house with three floors and a yard. She had a dog. We would all have bikes. It was going to be beautiful. Up until then, we had lived in the apartment that Sarah and her husband Paul had lived in. Paul, of course, was gone. Pearl doesn't have any memories of him. Aurora says she remembers crawling under the dinner table in the New York apartment and playing with a man's shoes, and a man swinging her by the ankles, but she thinks these memories may be apocryphal. I did meet the Paul person briefly, Aunt Nancy told me once, coming through New York just after Aurora was born. I must say, the flat made rather more an impression than the man. Well, I mean really, 4 bedrooms on the Upper East Side, upholstered walls, quite gorgeous Chippendale furniture shoved into the corners, and your mother and her Jewish yogi making everyone sit on cushions, carrying Aurora from room to room in some sort of Mexican basket. It was extraordinary, mad, really. Paul left us the apartment in New York City because part of his transformation was to leave behind all the worldly trappings of his life as Paul in order to fully embrace his life as Deepak. And he would have no need of things like sofas or end tables in the ashram. The problem was, those things weren't really Paul's to renounce because really they all belonged to Paul's mother. Paul's mother lived in Florida because it was better for her health, so she didn't mind. But Paul also had a brother named Barry. Barry, it turns out, was a man who had very strong feelings, and one of those feelings was that the apartment should be his now. He didn't choose to honor Paul's final decision as Paul. He chose to have anger. So Sarah and Barry had been discussing this issue of the apartment for many years, and now everyone agreed that it was best that Barry should have the apartment back. And this was an extra good thing because it had created this opportunity for us to go and live with Nana in Delaware, which would be beautiful. Nana's husband, our grandfather Prescott, was dead, like I said, and had been since Sarah was little. He had gone to Ecuador to preach the good news with a missionary group. Unfortunately, upon landing in Ecuador, he became very ill and died as a result of a blood clot in his leg before ever converting a single Indian. That was not quite the version I got initially because it was my sisters who first told me about him. "Grandfather was killed by accordion Indians," Pearl whispered to me. We were standing in the backyard of our new house, having been let out to play. None of us had ever stood in a backyard of our own before until we came to Delaware. There was a fence running the perimeter of the yard, but before you got to the fence, there were a lot of trees and a bird bath and flower beds. There was even a shed with tools in it, but we had been told not to go inside that without a grown-up. "Who got killed?" I asked. "Our grandfather," said Pearl, "our mom's dad." Aurora, who was nice about these things, lifted me up so I could look into the bird bath. Disappointingly, it was just a dish with water and a few leaves in it. I thought it might look more like our bath, with toys and soap bubbles. "Grandfather was a preacher," said Aurora. "Preacher Prescott." "He went to preach to the accordion Indians," whispered Pearl, "but they killed him." That sounded very bad. Had the Indians squashed our grandfather with their accordions? We had an alphabet book, one of those ones meant for gifted children, which featured the fine arts for the letters. B was for bassoon, E for easel, A was for accordion. "They didn't kill him," said Aurora. "He died before he got to the accordion Indians. His leg got sick and all the blood got stuck in his leg, and that's how he died." "The accordions would have gotten him anyway," said Pearl. "Probably," said Aurora. I wanted to go inside and ask Sarah if I could give the birds my froggy sponge to play with, but just then Aurora and Pearl started hopping around the bird bath. "We are accordion Indians," sang Aurora. "We are wild girls, wild girls." "And we'll kill you," shouted Pearl, crouching down on the ground and growling. Aurora hopped on one foot and looked at Pearl. "No," said Aurora, "we're shy. We hide in the trees." And they danced off to one of the trees, and I hopped along with them, but they said no, I had to be Grandfather Prescott. I was always being given parts like this. By the end of the week, we had modified and perfected this game, which mostly consisted of me watching Aurora and Pearl run around and make noises. They were very enthusiastic accordionists. Until it was time for my big moment. Then I got to run in front of them and shout, good news, and then my leg, and fall down. Then Aurora and Pearl would pick me up, my favorite part, and carry me around for a while and put me behind the tool shed. Then they threw grass at me. At a certain point, Pearl would demand that we leave because the tool shed and everything in it belonged to her. Aurora would pick me up again, hooray! And then we all went to the side yard, which was Florida, and which was where you went for better health. I don't think I got this all sorted out until I learned about Ecuador when we got to geography in 4th grade. Grandfather Prescott died when Sarah was little, so she never had a father around either. Mark's father left when Mark was 4. I don't know if his father is alive. I don't know if Mark even knows. I guess it's best not to get stuck on what you think things are, or how they happened, or why. We should remain as detached as possible. Maybe for a second, when a caterpillar emerges from its cocoon, there is a moment when it freaks out and thinks, hey, what happened? What are these wing things for? What happened to all my little legs? But then it just flies away. That's how we should be as people. We should be ready for everything to change. Yeah. Thanks. So the next bit is a bit of Luke and his dad, Mark. A little further on in the summer, they've now been together for about 6 weeks, and they've gotten to know each other. And Mark has taken him to Illinois, where his mother lives. So Luke has met his other grandmother, and they've been hanging out together in Illinois. And then the two of them take off for a little side trip, and this is a little conversation Luke and Mark have. The next day, Luke and Mark run to Mark's old high school. They jump the fence of the athletic field where Mark used to play football. What position did you play? Luke asks. Quarterback, second string. Yeah, I had 1 or 2 good moments, but I wasn't like the star guy, really. I had a good arm, I guess. I wanted to play, Luke tells his father, when I was little, but Sarah wouldn't let me. She gave me a bongo drum instead. You're kidding me. The bongo drum was cool, Luke says. What was less cool was having to play it for Sarah's ecstatic dance class. Hey, how come you call your mom Sarah, Mark asks, and not Mom? Well, we call her Mom sometimes. She once told me that sooner or later you have to see your parent as an autonomous person and not just an extension of yourself. I guess she figured why not sooner than later. But you're close, right? You seem really close. We're close, Luke agrees, yeah. But it worked, I think, her plan, because I do see her as an individual. I see her as a person first, and my mom second. Luke has said this before, but now he wonders if it is entirely true, and if it is, what exactly it means. When I was a kid, Mark says, I think I heard my mom more than I saw her. She was like this constant yammering noise in my head. Well, that house does echo, Luke points out. Does it? Mark laughs. I guess it does. Anyway, I just wanted to get away from all that noise. How come you wanted to be an actor? Luke asks. My drama teacher. Mark squints into the sun. He was pretty great. Mr. Holt. He was also my English teacher. That was the only subject I was really good in. Anyway, he got me to try out for the school play, King Lear, a high school production of King Lear. He had to make a lot of cuts. Yeah, he wanted me to play Edmund. You know the play? Luke shakes his head. Well, Edmund is the son of the Earl of Gloucester, but he's the bastard son. There's a legitimate son, Edgar, and Edmund is all screwed up about that. He's mad at his father for loving Edgar more, and he's mad at the world for trying to tell him who he is and what he can have and what he's supposed to be and all that. So Edmund plots against his half-brother, and for most of the play you think he's a total villain, but in the end he redeems himself. Anyway, Mr. Holt said he thought I had talent. Mark's voice takes on an edge of sarcasm. He could tell by the way I read things out loud in class, and he thought I had a real feel for Shakespeare's language, a sensitivity. So you did it, Luke asks. Yeah, Mark says, his tone lightening. I mean, whatever, a little high school production, but it was the first time I really felt like I was in the right place. I was more excited about rehearsals than, God, pretty much anything. And the audience the first time, I was sort of nervous, but the moment I stepped on stage, I was just like, I just wanted everyone to know exactly what Edmund was feeling, and I knew I could do it, and I knew I was good, you know? I was so pumped. Best feeling in the world. I kept playing football and everything, but I knew that as soon as I got out of school, I was going to go to New York and become an actor. I used to talk to Mr. Holt about it. He gave me plays to read and books on acting. He helped me find a drama school. He was like, go for it, you have to follow your dream, blah, blah, blah. So he must be really proud of you. Luke is thinking that he would be really proud of Mark if he were Mr. Holt. Do you keep in touch and stuff? Is he still here? I used to call him from time to time. Things were hard for me, you know, when I was starting out. I shared this shithole apartment in New York with 2 other people. I worked at this restaurant, an electronics store, moving boxes. I was in over my head in so many ways. I got into I just, struggled. It wasn't like I never thought about you, Luke, or I didn't know what to do. I know, Luke says. He wants to get back to the story. So anyway, eventually started acting for real, right? I got a part in an off-Broadway play. Mr. Holt was the first person I called. He was so excited. And he came to see it. My mom didn't even come to see it, but Mr. Holt did. He came, and afterwards it was sort of awful. I mean, I thought of him as kind of not a father, but, a mentor or whatever. And he kissed me, and I punched him. You punched him? Luke asked. Like a real punch, like in the face? I guess I felt a little betrayed or something dumb like that. And he cried. I told him he was wrong about me and that I wasn't a fag, and he cried. He stood there crying and saying, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," in this crappy little hotel room where he was staying, and I walked out, and I never saw him or talked to him again. And he died a few years later from bronchitis, so probably from AIDS. I don't know. Mark runs backward a few paces and throws an imaginary football across the field. "Thou hast spoken right, 'tis true," he calls out. "The wheel has come full circle. I am here." "Is that King Lear?" Luke asks after a moment. "It's a good play," Mark says. "You should read it." "I will." Was all of that too much information, as they say? Luke thinks that it wasn't too much, that he's not that sheltered or firewalled, that he knows that life can be really messed up. Relationships can be very complicated, Sarah has sometimes said, but imagine a world where people treat each other with love. Isn't that a world you want to live in? And Luke had always said yes, because that did seem to be the best kind of world. But now he begins to think this through. Did Sarah mean that we should live in a world where we treat all people with the same amount of love? Because unless we love everybody exactly equally, then we'll be right back where we started. Only people will be going to war over amounts of love instead of hate, or amounts of tolerance or compassion. We would have said to Iraq, yes, we totally love the people who flew the planes into the World Trade Center, and we totally accept them and have compassion for them, but we have slightly more love for the people in the World Trade Center. So we are going to bomb your country. You have to love everybody exactly equally, or it won't work. Luke concludes that universal love, like reincarnation, might be one of those ideas that are just mathematically improbable. Luke tells his father that he can tell him anything, and Mark says, "Okay, but now you tell me about playing drums for your mom's ecstatic dance class, because that sounds like a fucking riot." And so Luke had told Mark about that. He watched his father throw imaginary footballs. He thinks about this now, sitting at his father's desk with his father's high school copy of King Lear in front of him. Luke is moved by the sight of Mark's handwriting in the margins, notations in pencil indicating where a teenage Mark had needed to go on stage. Mathematics aside, Luke simply does not want to love his father with no more love than he has for everybody else. He wants to love his father particularly, exceptionally, uniquely. He would like there to be an us, that is his father and himself, and a them, that is everybody else. Weeks ago, Luke had wished to render the words father and son meaningless, beyond their biological markers. Today he wished to throw them across the field to his father, see his father throw them back. Today, Luke was willing to exchange even the idea of universal love for an actual game of catch with his dad. Thank you.
You have been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget that you can check out this and all of our other great podcasts at www.skylightbooks.com. Today's music was provided by Fragile Gang. You can check them out at MySpace, Facebook, and the iTunes Music Store. Thanks for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.